Hey! So today we're going through the patch 11.24 highlights. The goal for this one is to try and make it a little bit faster than normal. I know people generally do breakdowns or walkthroughs for it, but I went through, read the patch notes, got all that lovely information that Mort and all of his developers did, and I'm going to try and break it down to what's actually important for the game for y'all coming into this next 4-week patch that we got, and see what we can get going on. So first off, we got some augment changes. The biggest ones here are the hearts and emblems and souls. So the heart changes are going to be now every heart that you get, or not every, most of the hearts that are available through your augments are going to also give you a 1, 2, or 3 cost champion, which is predetermined based on the trait, to help you activate that trait. Now this goes similarly along with emblem, except rather than a heart, you're going to get an emblem, and they're renaming the emblems, so rather than being the funny names that went along with them, they're going to be called the trait name plus the crest, so Mercenary Crest. And for most of these crest augments, you're going to be also receiving a 1, 2, or 3 cost champion, dependent on the trait, and again, this is predetermined by each trait to help you activate that. Finally, souls have been changed. Now they are called the crowns, so just another example, Mercenary Crown. And you are going to now get, instead of 2 hearts, for most of them you're going to get 2 of the crests or emblems to be put on your champions. And the only difference is, for something that is a team-wide buff like Scholar and like Enchanter and like Clockwork, you're going to now get those. They're going to be hearts still, like they are currently, but you're also going to get 8 gold, because they don't give any innate benefit to the champions that you would say put the emblem on. Okay, so the continuation of the augments here. Broken Stopwatch is being reduced to a tier 2, but it's being nerfed by 1 second. Don't think it's going to be really big, because you don't want to take it early. You might take it mid-game. It might make Clockwork stronger, because Clockwork is really strong with Broken Stopwatch, but it's yet to be seen how this is going to affect it. Innovator Heart can now not be found on 1-3, and Innovator Soul, which is now Innovator Crown, can only be found on 4-6. This is going to be huge to make it so Innovators cannot just be a guaranteed win from 1-3. You're not going to be guaranteed to get your Innovator with just your Sind Ezreal, and you're not going to be guaranteed to get Dragon from the first augment choice of the game. That's going to be gigantic, especially in conjunction with the changes to the Dragon and Bear that we'll talk about later. March of Progress is now a tier 3, and it's going to be 5 experience. It's a really strong one. You're going to see it less because it's a prismatic now, but just know March of Progress still exists. If you don't see it in your gold pool, it's because now it is a prismatic, and it's going to be a little bit stronger. Windfall has been nerfed early and buffed late, reduced by 5 gold early, increased by 5 gold late. More prismatic changes to make them feel a little bit fair, to be honest. Item grab bag, which is actually going to be a really big one, especially if it's your default tier 1 or tier 2 choice. You're no longer receiving reforgers for these tier 1s and tier 2s. It's going to make it a little bit weaker, because it was really nice to be able to reforge, especially on multiple items. But to be fair, especially for a tier 1, a free fully completed item and a reforger is kind of broken anyway, and no one really talked about it, so it's a fair change. It's just not a default option anymore. Knife Edged has been reduced by 5 AD and AP, or no, just AD, which is going to be big for your frontline comps where you got AD damage dealers, Trundles, Warwicks, Yones, all that stuff. Though those are going to be changed later anyway, so it might not be seen as much as you think. Gold reserves for mercenaries, where you get bonus damage in general based on how much gold you have, at a cap of 60% bonus, is now being changed. So rather than 1% per gold, it is 2% per gold. This will give you the ability to use 20 gold above your 50, because you can use 30 gold to maintain that 60% bonus damage. So that means if you need to roll it down, you have from your 50 gold that you're generally keeping for interest down to 30 of usable gold before you reduce your bonus damage. It's going to make that way stronger, kind of mandatory to take on mercenaries if you plan to carry mercenaries. Say you're carrying GP, that's really big. So that'll be fun to see. It seems like it'll be much more of a usable augment now. And as a direct relation to the reroll meta that we have gone through for the past 3 weeks, featherweights has been reduced 5, 10, and 10% accordingly based on its tiers, to really make it a little bit more fair. It's really strong on the 2 costs. Now all of the 2 costs besides Warwick have kind of been butchered, but it still makes it so this doesn't happen again. Traits. Okay, Challengers at 4, 6, and 8 have been reduced by 5, 10, and 15% accordingly. This is a huge nerf to the vertical Yone build. It's not going to be a guaranteed top 2, top 3 anymore, because you're just not going to really get the same benefit, especially because Yone gets nerfed a little bit later. It's not going to be as good. It's not going to be completely taking him out of the meta, but he's not going to be a guaranteed top 3, especially with that vertical 8 challenger thing. Chemtech is receiving a humongous buff. This is probably going to make it the most used augment in the meta. 8 seconds is going to be the iteration across the board, which is really the only useful one anyway. Everyone stopped at tier 2 with a 5 Chemtech at max, because your fights generally aren't going past 8 seconds anyway, and it takes you about 3 to 8 seconds to get to that percentage health to actually activate your Chemtech trait, so the extra ones were just useless. But now 7 and 9 tech becomes more useful because it will increase your overall attack speed scaling and your health regen scaling, going for a 2 to 4 increase of percentage of your health regen and a 25 to 50% bonus attack speed per tier at 7 and 9, which is just gigantic. It'll be huge on Urgot, and it'll be huge on Warwick. So Innovator Dragon, the crit change reduced to 40%, not 40 and the AD and AP has been reduced by 20 on the bear effect. Realistically, they're just trying to get Innovator not to be as strong. Dragon is unkillable, and that crit change that increases your crit percent chance when it attacks, being reduced by 40% is going to be really useful. Just a little bit, make it more fair. So it's going to be a little bit harder to get your dragon, and it's going to do a little bit less. So you can still get it if you want that, but it's not going to be a guaranteed first. Arcanist AP has been reduced for Arcanists at 4 and buffed at 8. However, 3 of the most important Arcanist champions have been just kind of nerfed into oblivion, so there's really no reason to run Arcanists like that anymore. Everything's going to have to change around a little bit. Syndicates, their armor and MR has been increased at a baseline level, but at 7 syndicates, the percent increase of their stats that go directly to syndicate champions has been reduced. It's going to make it so syndicates at 7 might not be as necessary, but running 3 syndicates with some of these buffs might actually be very useful. The Twin Shot AD has been increased, which is a very minor increase. I just included it in here because it's going to directly relate to the Jinx Urgot 7 Chemtech build that I would almost guarantee is going to be the top build for this set. So I figured I'd put it in there to say that Urgot's being helped, Jinx is being put back a little bit, but Twin Shot is kind of filling in where Jinx gets put back. Okay, so your 1-cost champions. There's been a couple of them. I'm really only including the most important changes because some of the other numbers just don't matter. There's been minor Camille mana nerfs, and there's been a moderate mana nerf for Darius, and a moderate healing nerf. Doesn't really matter very much. They're not going to be as oppressive, but you can still 2-star them, put your carry item on them, and win straight through tier 2s, or your stage 2. It's not going to be that big of a deal. So for 2-cost champions, Trundle AD Steel has been reduced to 2 and 3 stars, and his attack speed slow has been reduced to 25% flat. Katarina, Shunpo damage has been reduced by 20, 25, and 30, and Blitzcrank 3-star has been reduced from a 1337 damage for his hook to a 900 damage. Now I'm going to sit on these ones for a second because these have been the most oppressive units in these past 3 weeks. Trundle reroll and Katarina reroll have been destructive. Not guaranteed first, as we've found out that the vertical Yone build is, as well as the Innovator build, but some of the easiest force reroll comps that will guarantee you a top 5. So either minor AD or minor LP reduction or guaranteed 10 LP. These have been pushed back enough where you're not guaranteed a top 6 with these. You have to play them correctly. Trundle has been pretty much pushed into nothingness, especially with the following Echo nerf that'll come into this next slide. It's just not realistic to play Trundle anymore. Unless you're playing him for his bruiser stats, he's just not going to be as good. Katarina hasn't been nerfed into the ground like I had thought she was going to be. You might be able to re-itemize her to prioritize AP damage rather than healing, and she might do more damage and just survive a little bit less, but she definitely didn't get destroyed like I thought she would. And Blitzcrank is just irritating to get one shot. It's sad that 1337 had to leave his kit, but it was probably necessary. Kog'Maw has been increased at 1 and 2 stars by 1% for his percent health damage for Barrage, where at 3 stars it's been reduced by 1%. Kog'Maw feels really bad early game, and with the Ligmaw build you kind of bleed health until you get 3-star Kog'Maw, 3-star Kassadin. So with this change you should be a little bit more likely to not bleed out as much. You can maybe win streak. If you lose streak, you'll preserve some health, and it'll make Ligmaw more viable. Especially because Garen was slightly reduced with his execute damage. Not that Garen was important in that comp. He wasn't really a carry, but it'll help a little bit with that. And finally, probably the most important 2-cost change, especially for a buff, has been the duration between Zyra's ultimate and stun has been reduced. That'll make it feel a lot better when Zyra's going to go ult. She will stun them much faster and do the damage much faster to feel much more useful. Okay, so 3-cost champions. Lissandra has had her Iron Maiden damage, attack damage reduction, and attack damage reduction duration, that dazzle effect, has all been nerfed. The numbers aren't super important, but just know that she has been nerfed. However, her ult is very strong, but now it will no longer fizzle on CC and GA procs. So, with this nerf in her kit for her Iron Maiden, she is now also being buffed by the fact that she will no longer cast her ult and it won't work, which is going to be very important to keep her viable in the meta, especially for Scholars, especially for Chemtechs. Lissandra is not gone. She will be less oppressive. She won't be able to self-ult with Iron Maiden and kill your carry, but she will still be very important. Shaco has also received a buff. I don't know if it's Shaco or Shaco, I don't really care. But health, mana, and damage has been buffed for him. This will be very impactful. I think he will fill Katarina's role in the Assassin reroll comp that you can then include to Syndicate in and be very strong, but I guess we'll see. Tark's healing has been reduced because he could solo heal himself and your front line for ages with Arcanist and Redemption. So now he's no longer as strong. He's still a good unit. You still get him when you get a Socialite Heart, but just not as strong as he was. Vex's personal space, shielding, damage, and the shield stacking on shield explosion for personal space has been reduced heavily. Vex is no longer a champion. She will do damage. At 2 stars, she can be a tank, but she is no longer your main tank. She is no longer your primary carry. She can hold items for your bruisers and for your bodyguards, but by no means is Vex going to be your main carry. It's just too large of a reduction in her overall skills. She's not been gutted, she's not a target dummy, but she's just not what she was. Cho'Gath has had a slight health increase. It's about 100, I believe, but it's not going to be super big on paper, but it will stack exponentially with his feast stacks to make his feast do more damage. So anytime Cho'Gath gets a health buff, it's really good for his overall damage in feast, which then increases his overall health if he can successfully get his feast stack off. So it's a snowballing effect, and this is, I think, going to be a very good sign for Cho'Gath and mutants. Echo, as I said previously, was nerfed. Used the strongest champion in the Trundle reroll comp, and the second strongest champion in the Katarina buff reroll comp. He has been reduced, so now his attack speed buff for allies is no longer as strong. He's still Echo, he can still be tanky, he can still do damage with his thing, he still does the attack speed reduction for the enemies, but his overall increase of ally attack speed has just been reduced because he was too oppressive, he was too strong. Poor costs. Okay, Urgot, this is actually listed in the small changes. Urgot's mana has been buffed from 60 to 50. What is that? It's about 8. That's 5 auto attacks without taking damage to cast. That's going to be huge for Urgot, especially with the Chemtech changes. Yone's base AD has been reduced by 5. This, in conjunction with the overall attack speed decrease of Challenger, should make Yone less oppressive. Scion's health has been increased ever so slightly, but his stun duration for his 2 and 3 stars have been increased by 0.5 and 1 second accordingly. This does mean that Scion, I think, will take a bigger place in the meta, especially with the changes to Cho'Gath that we just saw, and the ever so present changes to Galio after the Clapio changes that we'll see in the next slide. Fiora damage in AD has been increased. She may be able to kind of put herself in the shoes of Yone for the main carry of the Challenger build, though I doubt it because the attack speed is just so important for that build. She also could duo carry with Jace backline in a 5 innovator build. There's some fun things that could be done with a Fiora carry. It's just kind of hard because she's so single target damage. Jin's base AD and Curtain Call AD scaling has been decreased, but overall mana has been reduced for time to cast. This is going to make it very strong for the Shojin Jin, and pretty much not change Jin as a carry, because he generally overkilled with his AD anyway, and especially when you run Clockwork, he's already got enough AD that he's not really going to be changed. Lux's reset on kills for her mana has been reduced by 10 mana. Lux is pretty much gone. I mean, she's might be used in an Academy build, but Arcanist is being beat up, Vex has been beat up, Victor, as you will soon see, is being beat up, and Lux was no longer the main carry in that comp anyway. Maybe the new blue buff will be important because it'll give you more base mana and it'll be overall beneficial to mana users, but I don't think it's going to be a Lux that we saw in Arcanist. I think it'll have to be different. Maybe Academy, maybe Scholar, I'm not sure. I think she'll fall to the wayside as an Academy buff, but I guess we'll have to see. Orianna's mana has been buffed, but the stun duration has been nerfed at 1 and 2 stars. It's been a minor stun duration difference, but I had seen a lot of people talking about this was just an overall Orianna buff. But since Orianna's AI is already pretty bad, just because it's the nature of her kit, where part of her does damage and part of her does shielding, I don't know where she ults. I don't think this makes Orianna a carry. I think it makes her a good support unit. It makes her a good unit for a Jhin comp, or a good additive for an Enchanter buff. But overall, she's just not the carry that I think we want her to be. I think she could be fun with Shojin and Morellos and Archangels, similar to how you play Seraphine carry, but her AI is just a little wonky, so she's not a reliable source of damage yet. And finally, for the 5-cost champions, Akali health and damage increased. This will be massive, because in addition to the aggro buff, or the aggro bug, being resolved for this patch, assassins are just going to generally get stronger, and Akali now has a little bit more tank stats for her health, and for the Syndicate buff of tank stats, Akali should be kind of a force to be reckoned with. I kind of think Mort just loves Akali, because this is case in point, she's going to be really strong. Galio's health and Grand Entrance has been increased, AD decrease, that's just a response to Clapio. Clapio was too strong, so they had to cut him down somehow. Now he's a better tank, and just as a fun aside, 3-star Galio, if anyone ever actually hits that, Grand Entrance size will increase, similar to how Volibear's in last set size was increased to ult the whole board. I'm pretty sure it's a similar thing with Galio, so we'll see. Jace's armor and MR is being reduced, which is a direct debuff to the frontline Jace, which also relates to the frontline shielding decreasing. He's just too strong when you put a Warmongs and a Bramble Vest on him. So they want to take a little bit of that back from Jace, prioritize a little bit more of backline damage Jace by increasing his AD increase when put into backline. It'll be fun to see how that works, maybe in an Innovator comp, maybe in a 4 Enforcer comp, because 4 Enforcer has now been fixed. It'll be interesting, because backline Jace I've been seeing played around with, he seems really fun. Especially with the BT, i.e., like, Jace can just do 5k damage at 1 star, which is unbelievable. Jinx attack speed has been reduced by 0.05, and her rocket damage at 2 stars has been reduced by 10. Now, this is her melee range rocket, like her actual auto attack rocket. I don't think this is going to be a very big nerf. I'm pretty sure this is just a on-paper nerf to make it seem like they didn't want to make Urgot very strong, because Jinx Urgot will be a mandatory comp. And this says, okay, we've buffed Urgot, we've buffed Chemtech, let's nerf Jinx because she's a guaranteed twin shot component with Urgot. But this is also going directly beside the twin shot buffs, so does it matter? I don't think so, especially if you have sisters, it's not going to be important. The Victor mana has been nerfed and damage has been reduced at 1 and 2 stars. Victor has been bullied. He was strong, his lasers could kill the whole team. He took a really long time to cast, so you needed to make sure you had Shojin on him. I believe it was 4 autos to cast at a 2-star Victor with Shojin and Scholars. It's not going to be that anymore. I believe it's going to be closer to 6 or 7, so he can still cast, but at what cost? Especially with Arcanist not being as strong. Probably not as useful for Victor. Probably also not useful to put him into the Chemtech build, because you will just use your 8th slot for Jinx and your 9th slot for Yumi. So I think I also spelled his name wrong, but that doesn't matter. You know who Victor is. Okay, bug fixes. The biggest one, the aggro bug, has been fixed. Every comp is going to benefit from this because the aggro bug was awful. Assassins will see a really big benefit from this. You will also find it much easier to either win streak or lose streak in stage 2. I've noticed this specifically where if I'm running a Tristana, an Ezreal, the aggro bug has pretty much lost me either 4 to 6 extra health going by the time I'm at 3-3, or it ruins my win streak. So it can really help. I think everyone's going to like this aggro bug's fix. Lissandra ultimate no longer fizzles on CC or GA, so that way she can fully use her ultimate and doesn't just give up. The same thing goes with Kai'Sa, which is a massive buff for Kai'Sa. Her biggest weakness was CC fizzling her out, and now CC and GA will no longer do that. And finally, Malzahar, at least of the big bug changes, or bug fixes, Malzahar will no longer have mana regeneration issues on his first auto attack of each round. This is kind of, at least what was explained by Mort, was that this is the reason that blue buff was your primary item on Malzahar, was to kind of counteract this bug. But now it will no longer be necessary. You might be able to go higher damage on Malzahar. You still might go new blue buff just to have that higher mana and constant ulting of Malzahar, but just know that that bug has been fixed. Okay, important comps to look out for. Now you can expect another video from me kind of going more in depth about these comps either today or tomorrow, but pretty much Warwick reroll. The dog is still in town. Who let the dogs out? I don't know. Warwick is still here. He didn't get touched. Chemtechs got buffed. Warwick is a problem. 3 Chemtechs did get nerfed, so that is something to look out for. You probably need to go the 5 Chemtech 2 Challenger build of Warwick rather than the 4 Challenger 3 Chemtech build, just as a thought process, but Warwick will be very strong. Full Chemtech Urgot plus Jinx, 7 Chemtech Urgot plus Jinx will be huge, just like it was last patch, prior to the B patch. Urgot's back. That's really all I can say. Ligma, also very strong. Now, one point to put in is that Lissandra will be in huge contention for 4 comps in this meta. So, not many more 3 comp Lissandras. She's not going to be as oppressive, but she's going to be there for Scholar. She's going to be there for Chemtech. The Ligma build won't matter of the changes that were done to Garen, because he's not important. But your Kassadin, your Caitlyn, your Kog'Maw, your Graves, and your Garen are still going to be the primary pieces. You might be able to sub out Graves later game for the newly buffed Scion. I don't know. I think it could be strong, but I'm not too sure. I'd be interested to see someone try that. Mutants go similar along with the Kog'Maw and the Malzahar and the Cho'Gath. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some comp worked around these, and probably a dual Colossus frontline, Cho'Gath, Scion, with some sort of either snipers or 2 Arcanist carry backline. I think that could be really strong, especially with some Janna included in there with some enchanters. It'll be nice to see some mutants back in rotation. Reroll assassins, except rather than the Academy Blitzcrank, you're probably getting Darius Braum with a Shaco carry. I think it's still going to be strong. You're going to be rolling down on 7 rather than 6. You still probably 3-2 roll down 6 till you get 2 stars of your 4 main carries, but your 7 will be your roll down time, and I think that'll still be strong with RFC, IE, BT, or DB on Shaco. Scholars is going to be big. Prestivent, if you watch him on Twitch, has been doing a lot of Scholars lately. I believe he's ranked number 1 for Scholars right now. That's a good person to look at for that. Lissandra, Yumi, Zyra, Janna, and then some enchanters in there. If I believe correctly, you might have to throw in some bodyguards because Urgot is going to be a problem. I will keep saying that. So throw in some bodyguards, maybe take out your enchanters, and you're going to be pretty set with that. 4 or 6 scholars, I believe the meta build will be 6 scholars, at least at the moment, just because that's so much mana, you know. And then finally, the next big one that I can at least think of is Jhin carry. Jin's still really strong. He might cap out at 9. He's an expensive build, but if you get him, he wins the game. You can also probably include a Jhin carry into a Tristana carry or a MF carry. Some sort of sniper carry, now that assassins are going to be reduced, will be very helpful. Assassins and challengers and Arcanist, because you have to be cross-mapped from the Lux, are all being reduced, which then opens up the floor for snipers to come back into the game. And I think with the Jhin buff, with the Shojin, and Tristana not being touched, and MF being at a decent enough spot right now, can really put snipers into a good spot. So, TLDR of everything I just said, Yone's gone, Vex is a target dummy, kind of, not really, that's exaggeration. Katarina still exists, but she's more of an assassin placeholder. Urgot is going to be the best carry in the game. I will mark my words on that. Woof woof, me Warwick, mute all, write that every game. Force your Warwicks, roll down on 3-2, reroll Warwick, Lysandra, Quinn, you're fine. Bodyguards are probably a must this patch. There's gonna be so much AD. The AP is nowhere near as effective, and your bodyguards are really substantial units anyway. In conjunction with these bodyguard changes, and what I didn't mention is there was a brief Bruiser's buff, which will then make it much more important for your tanky frontline. Your Last Whispers and your Giant Slayers are going to be must-buy items in this patch. They're also best in slot anyway on most of these carries, so always think about that, always try and greed them, because most lobbies that will guarantee you an extra placement. Finally, the new blue buff is strong. The new Frozen Heart looks kind of strong with the mana and the extra slow speed and the blue buff with the mana, but the Arcanists aren't there, and the Challengers aren't there, so the attack speed reduction from the Frozen Heart and the blue buff mana from the Lux and it's cool. It'll probably come more into play in B patch or next patch when you can then utilize how strong the blue buff is. But hey, that's just my 2 cents. I did not hit the 10 to 15 minute mark like I hoped. This was a massive patch. Hopefully B patch will be smaller and you will be at a comfortable place in the meta without 4 comps and a Clapio in there. I hope y'all found something interesting out of this. If you like what you heard, go ahead and press that subscribe button, hit me with a like or a comment below. If I talk too fast, let me know. I run into that problem, but I appreciate y'all for watching, and I will see y'all next time.